As many of you know, we have a very special guest with us here today. His name is Trey Sellers. He is the Vice President of Enterprise something at Unchained Capital. But many of you actually know that I have been a very pleased client, for lack of a better word, with Unchained Capital for over a year now. I think it's well over a year now, and I can't speak more positively enough about my experience there. Many of you know that. I know as a result of me talking about my experience at Unchained Capital that many of you have actually decided to go over to become clients of Unchained Capital as well. But today, guys, we're going to bring online with us Trey Sellers, who is integral over at that operation. We'll talk a bit about what's going on in the Bitcoin space or the Bitcoin community, the Bitcoin world, for lack of a better phrase right now. But more importantly, I'd like to give Trey an opportunity to address you about all the things that Unchained Capital is doing to address many of the concerns, some of which I will touch upon today. Some of the concerns which I believe will only grow in time. I want Trey to speak to us about what Unchained is doing about those concerns, especially on the side of security and self-custody, where he sees the business, where he sees the trend of self-custody going. So it's going to be a really, really interesting session here today. So guys, without any further ado, what I'd like to do is bring Trey on. Let's do it. There you go. How are you, Trey? How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Oliver. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, it's an honor for us to have you here. As I mentioned in my brief little intro there, most of our members are very familiar with Unchained simply because I use you. I use Unchained, and I speak incessantly about my experience there. I do know that quite a decent number of our following has either followed up or become clients of Unchained as well. Um, but never enough. So we'll talk about some things regarding that. But um, Trey, what I'd like to actually start off with is when were you born?
I was born in 1984.
No, I'm sorry, not that born. Nobody cares about
I
that.
am almost
When
40.
were you
You're
orange
outing me here.
pilled? When were you orange pilled?
When
When
was
were
I
you
orange? When
reborn,
was I
Trey?
reborn? uh, I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011, I think. I came to this whole thing from like the liberty side, libertarianism and
Oh,
how to like gain sovereignty over your life. Was really into that stuff. Ron Paul back in 2008 was kind of my orange pill moment for the libertarian side of things. Um,
actually, quite a number of Bitcoiners became Bitcoiners through their experience with Ron Paul. Really interesting.
yeah, it definitely is interesting that uh, over the years, Bitcoin hasn't really been fully steeped into the libertarian culture as much as you would think it would be. Bitcoin is liberty money, in my opinion, and there is no better way to effect the type of change that we all want to see in the world in terms of allowing people to live their lives freely and take control over their financial destiny, as well as be able to look after their families
Absolutely.
and be able to not be subject to other people's whims about what they should be doing with their lives. Then Bitcoin, having control of your own money, not relying on somebody else for that, and not accepting that other people can arbitrarily print money at your expense, because that's exactly what's happening, is a key and critical part to seeing liberty grow across the globe. And that's what Bitcoin represents to me. Um, it's not just about building my own wealth, which is a very important part of this. Let's not like mince words here, or let's not pretend like this isn't
Absolutely. That's
an
an
important
integral
part
part
of
of it.
this,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Bitcoin is the ultimate savings vehicle, and a very important part of growing global wealth and people's personal wealth over the next 10, 20, 30, 50,000 years, right? That's how I
Right.
see it.
Absolutely. Well,
Um,
Trey, that's really, really interesting. 2011 is early. You mentioned that, obviously, it
heard
rang a
about,
bell when
heard about. I
heard
first
about it
bought
in
Bitcoin
2011. Yeah,
in
that's very
2014.
OG.
In
Very OG.
2014 is
I
when I
didn't
first bought
even, I, I, I just, I guess I was so wrapped into my own world that I actually did not, I heard about Bitcoin very late. But anyway, you mentioned that Bitcoin um, is a great savings vehicle. And this is something that we actually talk about quite a bit. Um, uh, I am constantly telling my Bitcoiners, if I can say that Bitcoin obviously is the greatest savings technology the world has ever had. And in recent times, savings, the ability to save properly for our future has been basically taken from us. Um, and this has been, in my opinion, very systematic in nature, where the ability to plan for your future has been robbed from us. It's literally been taken from us. And I believe that that's been certainly by design. And the money that we are basically forced and compelled to give our lives, our energy for, our time, our effort, we're taught to basically spend our entire lives for a money that is actually not intelligent to save in. And so for the first time in quite a long time, savings is that the ability to save and plan and secure the future of your family has basically been restored for us, for the human race, for the most part, because this is a phenomenon that has affected the entire world. The ability to build and save for a better tomorrow has been taken from us, and Bitcoin has come into our world, has basically come into our existence to deliver that ability back to us. So um, that's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. Do you remember when you made when this connected, when Bitcoin connected with you deeply enough to where you said, you know what, I have to start buying this? Do you remember that moment?
I started buying a little bit every month in 2014, and
Mm,
not enough though.
damn.
So here's what happened, right? I got
That's
to a point where uh, where my beautiful wife started questioning, like, what are you doing here? You're throwing our money away. I listened to her. You should always listen to your wife. This is one exception where if I could go back, I would take that back. I stopped buying. I still have those sats, but it wasn't until late 2018, 2019, where I really actually started understanding what Bitcoin was. So I bought it in 2014, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand anything about how it worked. I didn't really understand or grasp the significance of a fixed supply money that can't be debased, that can't be, using money that other people are printing for free is not a really good way to save, as you were talking
Right.
about.
Absolutely.
Um, but if you opt into a monetary system that nobody can control and nobody can print more units of for themselves and their cronies, uh, that is part of that liberty mindset that I was talking about.
But you didn't approach it this way when you
But I
first
didn't I
started.
didn't see it that way. I thought, oh, kind of cool, libertarian money, whatever. Maybe I'll get a little bit now that it's easy to buy on Coinbase back in 2014. And then when I finally started to, I would keep coming back to it every year or two, and doing a little bit more digging, a little bit more following of people. And I eventually found some of the right people to help me to understand what I was actually looking at. And
Now,
from there,
I'm sorry, were you, at that time, were you self-custodying the Bitcoin or was it
oh,
just basically on Coinbase?
it was on Coinbase
Gotcha.
through probably 2018 or so. And
Mhm.
when I started learning more about what this was and what the importance of it was and what the significance of it was, and then started learning about the fact that you should be or could be self-custodying, the fact that the power that Bitcoin has is very much limited if you're not holding your own keys to it. That when that started resonating with me, that's when I started taking those next steps. And I just did it on my own a little bit at first. It's very nerve-wracking when you're first
Yeah.
getting into this and you're like taking control of this. Is it going to show up? Can I actually spend this thing? What happens if my phone goes away? Right? Which is, I was using a mobile wallet at first, as a lot of people do. And that's great for small amounts. And we can get into
Sure.
what that looks like from a trade-off standpoint when you're talking about the different options for self-custody. But when I really started to get it, that's when I started feeling comfortable allocating much more capital, my personal capital, to Bitcoin, moving away from kind of dollar cost averaging into stock market index. I also came from a history of the financial independence, retire early community, which you and some of your followers may be familiar with. And it's all about saving and investing as much as possible, as early as possible, and living in a frugal manner so that you're being very intentional about the spending that you're having so that you can get to a place where you have financial independence and that you don't have to work for your money. You can choose how you want to spend your time and all that. So I was, until that 2018, 2019, I was very much down that rabbit hole. And I still am, but I use a
Yes.
different savings vehicle now, right?
Right.
I'm no longer DCAing into the stock market and an index where that's not investing, by the way, that's saving. But it's a very subpar instrument for saving. Well, Bitcoin
That's right.
fixes this, right? So now my excess cash flow, my dollar cost averaging, that's going toward Bitcoin because I recognize it as the apex predator of savings technology. And that's how you view it too as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you had your epiphany, if I can call it that way, around 2018 or so, and began to see this as something that addresses, um, you know, some of the real key problems regarding financial freedom, independence, being in control of your own money, and not and placing your future and the lives of your family in the hands of other men that control the value of the money that you're forced to work for and supposedly save. That happened for you around 2017, 2018, 2019. That's still relatively early. I came into the space. I began actually studying or looking at Bitcoin very seriously in 2019. I would spot check it around 2018.
Mhm.
Um, I told my audience that in 2019 that we were preparing to sort of enter into the Bitcoin space, but largely, just like you, more so as a trade, more so as just another financial product that we
Yeah.
can take advantage of. Um, and that epiphany for me, we struck for the first time actually in March of 2020, so the timing was right. But
Yeah, I'll
I
say.
had I think I mentioned to you, I had over 9,000 people following me into this Bitcoin play of ours. Some of them are actually here with us today. But at that time, my epiphany, if you will, basically occurred later in the year 2020, sort of in the latter part of 2020 as Bitcoin began its run. And it happened for me almost in a moment. It happened almost in an instant that what am I doing trading this thing? What am
Mm,
I doing selling this thing?
mm,
And the switch happened right here with my audience. Everyone understands that we were in this largely to make fiat gains. And the almost instant move from going to it being just another vehicle or tool to use to gain more fiat, we basically made the switch right here to make this freedom. that Bitcoin is freedom. Um, I even do my best to communicate the fact that I don't see why there is a major reason to ever sell this outside of emergencies, outside of life intervening in one way or another. But when is freedom overbought? When do you go back from freedom? When do you sell freedom to go back to a state
Yeah,
where
what are you
you
going to
don't
sell it
have
for?
freedom?
You're gonna sell it back into dollars that other people can print.
Right.
Now,
And
again, like Bitcoin is a tool, it is money. So
that's right.
there is something to be said for saying, hey, I've got this savings vehicle, I've got this money, and I want to use it as part of funding my lifestyle. You know, we just so happen to be in this unique moment in history where Bitcoin's adoption curve is accelerating, and it's
Yes,
still so early, as they say. Uh,
very.
so agree, hold on to it as long as humanly possible. But it is still a tool. It is still something that we should use in service of our goals. And so it's not
Yes.
some kind of like sacred thing that thou shalt not ever touch once it's been purchased, right?
Just
So
that
I
where
think it's
we
important
are
to keep
in
that
the
in mind.
cycle, yeah, where we are in the cycle, I just believe that every person ultimately, based on where we are in Bitcoin's adoption curve, you will regret selling. The
Yep.
same way people in 2014 regret, 2016, 2000, you're going to regret that. But yes, at the end of the day, it is money. It's a tool. As we approach more of the medium of exchange part of the Bitcoin adoption curve, I think that, its use on a day-to-day basis will start to basically increase. But we're in the burgeoning store of value phase. And so that's where you get basically number go up in its most exponential way.
Hmm.
And so if there were a time to think about using it on a day-to-day basis, this is not it, in my opinion. And that's why, and that's actually basically, in my opinion, what the message of companies like yours, Unchained Capital, is. Let's sock this away for a bit. Um, let's make it cold. Let's put it in our own personal self-custody, and let's sit on this for a bit. And anything you want to use on a day-to-day basis, you can keep on your phone or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So interesting. All right. I want to talk to you about, because we are in Trey. We're in very interesting times.
Yes, we are.
It's miraculous to me. We're coming upon another Bitcoin halving in April of 2024. We have what I believe to be imminent spot Bitcoin ETF approvals after 10 years of attempting to do this. We also have presidential election year, which all of the halvings occur on. We also are coming into a period where I believe, or a year where I believe that monetary policy will change and interest rates, as dictated by the Fed, will be brought down. So we have a lot of dynamic things kind of converging at the same time within the same year. What I want to ask you about is, what are your thoughts regarding the spot Bitcoin ETFs? I believe there are 11 that are slated to or looking to be approved in the next several days to next several weeks. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that as a positive for Bitcoin, the space, your company? Do you see that as a positive for hodlers of Bitcoin? Or do you see it as a negative? Do you see it as a threat? What are your thoughts?
Well, there's no simple answer to any of those questions. There are trade-offs to everything. I think it's a net positive for sure. Um, I I'm from Atlanta. I did a private dinner with a little bit of a presentation fairly recently talking about those exact things that you were highlighting as kind of the 2024 outlook, right? What can we expect? What happened in 2023 and what's going to happen in 2024? And the things that I highlighted were demand shock from the ETF,
Mhm.
demand shock, which I think is very underrated,
Yes.
or goes under the radar from this FASB ruling that allows corporations and larger
Wow.
enterprises to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet without taking on a penalty in terms of their financial reporting and their P&L. Um, and
That is not focused on enough, though. You're
it is
absolutely
not.
right.
I think it's a dark horse that we're going to
Yes.
see here, right? And then let me just remind myself here, the macroeconomic environment that you were mentioning, right? It does feel like we are, at least temporarily, at a bit of a pivot point where interest rates may start to decline. Maybe that is being led by the Fed. Maybe that's being led by a worsening economy. It's really tough to tell, right?
Right.
There's a lot of things at play there. But regardless, the Fed's aggressive tightening is almost certainly at an end, at least for the time being, and they may be reversing course there. So those are three different supply shocks. That excess liquidity that's created in an easing environment is provides demand for store value assets.
And what I think, Trey, a lot of people don't realize is that Bitcoin has never really had the demand shock side of the equation. It's always had the supply shock element through the 4-year halving, right? Or halvening, whatever word you want to use. But it's never really had the demand shock. I mean, how can there be really truly a demand shock when less than 1% of the world really is involved in
Yeah.
Bitcoin or has or holds Bitcoin? So we've never had the demand side. And with the demand side coming in to join in with the continual supply shocks we have every 4 years, um, it's stupefying to me what potentially can happen. Um,
Yes, yes. So
because it,
demand shock from the ETF, demand
yes,
shock from corporations
that's right.
and other enterprises, demand shock from more liquidity
Yes.
in the system and the easing macro conditions. All of that is hitting at the same time
At the same
as a
time.
supply shock coming from the halving, right? So you've got this confluence of events that are creating a very interesting time
Yes.
for Bitcoin and what could happen to the price of it. And really more importantly, in my mind, is just the adoption cycle that that can bring.
Yes.
Because if this is Liberty money, we need people to recognize it as something that they should be paying attention to. And that's what these
Absolutely.
things allow for. It brings Bitcoin into people's
Awareness.
perspectives and awareness. To your point, if you're not
Absolutely.
aware that Bitcoin is an ultimate savings vehicle, if you're not aware that it has a limited supply, if you're not even really aware of what it is, how can you possibly use it as a inflation hedge, right? As
Right.
some people
Mhm.
were criticizing um, the tracking of its price relative to CPI. And then you also mentioned there's a few other kind of honorable mention things here, right? Is presidential election that kind of feeds into that macroeconomic cycle
Yes.
where typically the administration's not going to do anything that's going to put the economy in
Right.
jeopardy if they can help it when they're leading into trying to be reelected.
Be
We have
reelected.
70% of all Bitcoin supply has not moved in at least 1 year. And
It's
that
incredible.
implies that the hodlers are out there in that Bitcoin is in strong hands, right? It's in the hands of Oliver and his group of people and and
It's all of
and
us, all
me
of us.
and exactly right. And the Unchained clients who
Yes.
are holding this thing as a store value over a very long period of time and want to do it in the best possible way, right?
And that base layer, that foundational base layer of the buyer of last resort, the hodler or the holder of last resort, that keeps rising every single cycle. I mean, we've never been at a place where over 70% of every single Bitcoin in existence, over 70% of the entire network hasn't moved in a year. That's an all-time new high. I believe that the last cycle, the all-time new high was in the 60s and then the 50s and the 40s. And so every single cycle that seems to rise and go up. So That's very powerful.
And the price went from 15.5 or whatever the low was
That's right.
to where we are now at 44,000. And
And no
that
one
number barely
still,
budged at
it's
all, right?
incredible.
Like people, Bitcoin is in strong hands. We can leave it there, right?
Right.
We
You
also,
know, I'm sorry, Trey, another thing that I think that is not focused on enough, we talk about it quite incessantly here, is the fact that for the very first time in Bitcoin's history, short history, the supply on centralized exchanges is actually going the other way. It's declining, and it's declining quite rapidly. It's declining at an alarming rate. I mean, it's hard to put a finger on the pulse of what the actual number really is, but I've heard numbers anywhere from 1.8 million Bitcoin on centralized exchanges up to 2 million. But if you were to look at the supply on centralized exchanges ever since they came into existence, throughout most of Bitcoin's life, that has been rising, because initially, obviously, people were they could only self-custody Bitcoin, but as centralized exchanges began to become more populous in the community, more and more people transferred their Bitcoin from their self-custody, from their computers, from these antiquated ways of securing it onto centralized exchanges. And you saw that basically rise throughout all of Bitcoin's life. And despite that rising supply on centralized exchanges, it still became the best performing asset the world has ever seen. Now, for the first time, we've got it going the other way. People are pulling their supply off of these exchanges. Now, you add that to all of the things we just mentioned, that it's just a freaking powder keg. Um, and I'm just wondering where all of these ETFs are going to get this supply over time. Now, I do realize that obviously as price goes up, more and more people might transfer their Bitcoin to be sold on these centralized exchanges. But it's really fascinating that that dynamic is coming into play as well,
yeah.
where the exchanges are being drained from the actual supply while this tremendous demand is coming in for the supply. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've seen those charts. I definitely the sentiment there I totally agree with. I'm not so sure it tells the full story. I think it used to back in the day when those
Interesting.
exchanges were really the only way that you could access Bitcoin in larger amounts. You have to go to the exchanges, right? And so that's why, to your point, you were seeing so much there. There's a lot more options now for how you can access Bitcoin and how you can hold it. There are a lot of other custodians that are out there. And so while the exchanges that are being tracked by those metrics are certainly losing Bitcoin to other sources, it's not so clear to me that that's necessarily all
That's
due to
interesting.
self-custody, right?
That's
Um,
interesting.
right?
I,
Fidelity is holding Bitcoin in there. Is that included in those numbers? I don't know. Grayscale has 600,000 Bitcoin within there. Is that included in those numbers? I don't
right.
know. I'm not an expert in those numbers. Um, I definitely think there is, you know, I definitely think your point is salient though, right? Where are the ETFs going to source this Bitcoin? Well, they're going to source it from all of the normal places. And the question is, what is the price that the market is going to bear in order for them to acquire it?
That's right.
I don't think it's going to come from MicroStrategy's stash. It's definitely not coming from my stash, my little
Coming
pittance
from my stash.
compared to MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. And I think a good portion of that 70% that we're talking about is not giving up their Bitcoin for anything less than $500,000 a coin or something, right? So,
Absolutely.
so it is going to be very interesting to see the dynamics of these ETFs. I was doing a little back and forth on Twitter yesterday about the circuit breakers that are built into the stock market and the exchanges there, and the interesting dynamics that could play out if, let's say, Argentina decides, hey, we're going to buy $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. Or they say, hey, we already bought $50 billion worth of
Right.
Bitcoin. We're announcing this. We're letting you know we're going to be a Bitcoin country. I'm not predicting any of this, right? I'm just saying like this is a possibility. We just got a new president down there. I mean, what's going to happen to the price in that scenario? It's going to gap very much higher. The ETF only trades between 9 and 4 on weekdays,
Right.
no holidays either.
Yes, they're going to be like
there
a
are circuit
breaker
breakers
on the
in.
ETF.
There are circuit breakers in. We saw a little bit of what could happen with the meme stock wars, back a couple of years ago. So I don't think this like breaks the ETF in any way, but it's going to be really fun and really interesting to see what's going on if these types of announcements start coming out over the next couple of years and the price just runs away and the ETF trading is just frozen because there's some kind of circuit breaker in place. Could happen to the downside as well, right?
It's certainly going to be a very gappy thing, I believe. It's going to trade very much like the ADRs trade. These units that basically represent ownership in foreign companies where their markets are open, our markets closed. So our market has to adjust to whatever happened in their market when our market was closed. So it's very gappy. I think it's going to be quite gappy, especially during the excessively volatile times.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see for sure. This is going to segue into what I'm about to touch upon now. Trey is going to segue into Unchained and how Unchained addresses some of the things that I particularly see as growing problems. At the price, currently at the price of around $145 to $150,000 per Bitcoin, Bitcoin becomes the most valuable asset in the world outside of gold. Apple today still, I think, holds that crown as being the most valuable asset.
Flips between them and Tesla, right?
No, Tesla's actually under Bitcoin. So, you have your big guys. Apple's number one. You have Microsoft, I believe, is number two. But there are 8 to 9 others that are ahead of Bitcoin. Well, I have silver is actually in there as well. But the point I'm trying to say is that, in my opinion, $150,000, given the fact, let's assume that Apple doesn't, or any of these other 7 or 8 ahead of Bitcoin don't actually explode in price as well. All things being equal, $150,000 per Bitcoin is really not that far away based on Bitcoin's historical moves.
Yeah, it's kind of a chip shot.
At that particular point, the world realizes that they're short the upside of Bitcoin. It's the most valuable thing outside of gold. How do you not have some exposure to it? And we talk a lot about that here. But where I want to go with this is the fact that the global awareness of how valuable Bitcoin is, especially when it crosses that $150,000 mark, is going to explode. This is going to become, in my opinion, one of the most valuable things to have and to go after. And that poses all kinds of benefits, but it poses a lot of risk, because when you possess the most valuable thing on earth outside of gold, a lot of people are going to want to take it. A lot of people are going to scheme and plan. There's security risk. There's safety concerns. And I believe that these concerns only grow in time, because as almost everyone in the world becomes more and more aware of its value, that we're going to have to place a lot of focus on making sure that we are secure in the custody of our Bitcoin, and also private and secure. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Bitcoin is a bearer asset. It is akin to gold and cash that you can hold yourself. And if you're trusting somebody else with that, you are opening yourself up to a number of different risks in terms of counterparty risk and hacking and all that kind of thing. Um, and if you choose to take self-custody, you do need to do it in a way that enables you to hold this bearer asset for a long period of time. It's great to have bought Bitcoin, but if you can't hold on to it, you're not going to benefit from the appreciation in its value and the monetary properties that it has when it becomes global money. When you're using it on a day-to-day basis, you need to have it first. And if you buy it now and 10 years down the line, you're able to spend that around the economy, but you actually don't control it because you didn't take the proper care of the private keys that control it, or you've trusted it with somebody else and your account gets hacked and sent somewhere else,
Right.
you can't actually gain the benefits from this correct decision that you made all those years ago. So it's extremely important that you think about the proper way to approach the custody of Bitcoin because it's unique. You can't print more Bitcoin.
That's right.
You don't have FDIC for the Bitcoin network,
That's right.
right? You can't just conjure up new units out of thin air and make people whole. And you have to make sure that because of that fact, that you're taking the proper care of holding onto the Bitcoin. And you have to make sure that you're taking the proper care and approach for ensuring that your heirs, your family, or whoever you need to take control of this Bitcoin as and when something happens to you and you're no longer here, how are they going to get access to this asset that is so valuable 10, 20, 30 years ago, or 30 years ago?
Very important.
You need to be thinking about these things now and putting in a system and an approach that makes it easy for them, that allows you to be in a very strong position relative to these key questions. It's something that is not really thought about that much when it comes to stocks and bonds and even real estate and that kind of thing, because there's a legal system in place and you're forced to trust other people with those things. But you're not forced to do that with Bitcoin. And there's some really strong benefits of not trusting other people by taking on that responsibility, but you just have to do it in the right way.
Yeah, I think that I think you touch on some very important points. I think that the fear actually, the knee-jerk reaction is to actually seek out not self-custodying Bitcoin. I think that the initial impulse is that I don't want to rely on myself. I don't want to be the one responsible for this. And, the system has indoctrinated us to basically place our entire wealth and our future in the hands of other men, so much that we're almost afraid to
Yeah.
take our own lives back and to control our own futures. We have not been taught that in recent times. And so it's very difficult to get people to sort of think about the fact that you're actually safer with this in your own custody, because history has proven that, the trust we play when we place our trust in these other systems, that they have all failed. And you mentioned something really interesting, that there's no guarantee that you'll be able to utilize your money if you give it to someone else to hold, especially Bitcoin. If you don't control the keys, how do you know when it's time for you and your family to take advantage of that you're going to be allowed to, or that the rules won't change because you don't have the keys, and that you're only limited to a certain percentage of it or what have you? Anything can basically happen. And so the risk is actually greater by not holding it. It's not less by you holding it, which is something that I struggle with. Some people feel that it's safer to have someone else holding it for them. But in this case, that is certainly not the case.
Yeah,
So
I
very
think
interesting points.
that's absolutely correct. Um, in the fiat world, all of your investments and your dollars and your stocks and your bonds can be instantly taken away from you. If you say the wrong thing on Twitter
Yes.
or if there's some other extenuating circumstance maybe you're just mixed up. Maybe you just got a name. Your name happens to overlap with somebody else that that the government is interested in. Could just be a mistake, and all of a sudden you can't access your money. So I'm not
Right.
saying that like you necessarily have to have 100% of your wealth in Bitcoin and stored in self-custody. Some people will take that approach, but at least as a hedge, you need to make sure that you've got Bitcoin and money that you control, right? That you have access to unilaterally without having to ask permission. It's so important.
I like this question here that comes from one of our Bitcoiners. What if the rules change outlawing self-custody? What are your thoughts on that?
They could. First thing I'll say is I'm actually very optimistic about Bitcoin's future in the U.S. and the rules that are governing it and all
I am
that.
as well. I am as
I think that the there has been a groundswell of recognition of Bitcoin as a legitimate asset. The ETF is proving that there's a lot of fear mongering around the things that Elizabeth Warren is putting up, but the odds of things going in that direction are very low, in my personal opinion. So
well.
take that for what it's worth.
I don't think that
What
she's got any major legislation passed throughout her entire career, right?
um, that's my understanding.
Okay.
um, what if the rules change though? Right, there was 6102 in for gold back,
1930.
yeah, back in 33. Well, I think the conditions there were very much different.
Very different.
Probably don't need to dwell on that too much, but it is a possibility. What if things change? Well, let's just look at the counterpoint. If you already don't control your Bitcoin and they make Bitcoin illegal, it's already gone,
Right.
instantaneously lost. If the rules change and you are already controlling your Bitcoin, you at least have an option there. You can take some time to assess the situation and know that your Bitcoin is safe, at least for the time being. And then you've got a choice. I'm not going to give anybody any advice one way or another on how to approach that situation. It's obviously very volatile and sensitive and personal in terms of those decisions, but at least you have that decision. And so that's what I would say there, right? Um, you absolutely have lost your Bitcoin if it's outlawed and you're trusting somebody else. You don't have that option. So let's get into a good, strong position, a strong
Yeah,
negotiating position, and then we can make our decisions based on the facts and circumstances as and when that might occur.
that's right. All right. So I just want to address my group here just for a second. Guys, we were just speaking about the fact that most people feel safer with someone else in control of their wealth, someone else in control of their own family's future. Bitcoin has basically come to change that and reverse that mindset, reverse that thinking, that it's time for us to be 100% responsible for our own lives, our future, our personal wealth, that trusting other people and other organizations has failed us. And it has failed us over and over and over again. Today, our own wealth in banks, in financial institutions, we seek permission to access our own life savings. We're told that we can only withdraw up to a certain amount of our own money out of a bank on a daily basis. If you were to walk in and ask for every single thing you have, you would be questioned, have to fill out forms, which is basically a form of you asking another man, another entity, permission for what you have built for yourself and your family. It is time to change this mindset. It is time to change this approach through self-custodying our own future. And it is time to put aside the fear of self-custody, because it is time for us to be responsible for our own lives and responsible for the future of our families. And that might take a little bit of work. That's perfectly fine. But it takes a little bit of work, and there's always a small price for freedom. And so I don't want anyone here thinking that it's safer not to self-custody. It's safer to self-custody. It's safer to safeguard your own keys, because I believe the day in the future is coming where you won't be able to own your own Bitcoin. They're going to force you to cash out for their piece of paper. Instead of you wanting to get the Bitcoin back, you're going to be forced to accept the paper value for it, and maybe at a discount. I believe that you won't be able to withdraw or access it in the future um, according to your full wishes or desire. I think that your access in the future potentially can be capped. We don't want to deal with any of that stuff. All of these things have happened throughout financial history. It is time for us to take full control of our own future. Right now, Bitcoin is our future. It's time for us to be responsible for our own freedom. Bitcoin is freedom. All right. Unchained Capital has come into existence to help us do that through a variety of ways. And that's what we're about to talk more specifically about now. All right, Trey, I just wanted to kind of summarize everything we just said there.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
All
well,
right.
one quick other point there, just to kind of wrap up that question about outlawing. Bitcoin is global. It's not money that is controlled by a specific, government or nation state. It is global, and we don't have a global rule set. Maybe some people want that, but we don't. There's a lot of contentious natures there. So the rules that apply in any given country are going to be different than the rules that apply in others. And so it's just important to keep that in mind, that just because Elizabeth Warren is, hemming and hawing about the U.S. laws and what she wants here, even if that were to happen, that doesn't mean that self-custody is outlawed around the world. And
Right.
that doesn't mean that it can't change again in the future. I mean, that, it's important to just recognize that there is no off switch here, right? There is
Right.
no off switch for Bitcoin. It is global in nature. And so that resiliency that's just built into those facts, again, allow for more optionality for what you've got, as long as you take it
Right.
upon yourself to grab onto that responsibility, right? And it's really not all
I'm
that
really,
difficult, actually. By the way, we'll
yeah,
talk about this, but if you can drive a car, you can hold your own Bitcoin keys.
absolutely sure. And I'm really not overly concerned. My people here know I'm not overly concerned with banning. Um, First of all, the United States couldn't even ban TikTok, which is basically controlled by a nation state that we have some serious issues with. In addition to that, historically, what happened when the United States tried to ban alcohol or drugs? And like you said, it's only one country. Bitcoin is global. So unless you get every single country in the world simultaneously banning Bitcoin, which you can't ban, by the way, but banning the on-ramps and off-ramps of Bitcoin, um, that just simply is not going to happen. Good luck getting every single country on the same page at the same time on the same day. It's just really not going to happen. And game theory is basically going to come into one country bans it and another country raises the benefits for being a Bitcoiner. Those things, I'm just not overly concerned with that. But um, Trey, what I want you to do for us, if you will, is let's talk about the individual products that Unchained delivers. So you have um, uh, multi-signature self-custody options. That's the first thing you offer, correct?
Yeah. So Unchained is a financial services company for a Bitcoin world. The primary relationship that we have with the majority of our clients is around this idea of self-custody and helping people hold their own keys. And there are some important ways that we approach it that allow you to eliminate any single points of failure. The majority of people who lose their Bitcoin lose it due to a mistake when they're in self-custody, or they trust it with somebody else and their account gets hacked, or the exchange goes bust because, as was the case in FTX, they were $1.4 billion short Bitcoin. And even though the price of Bitcoin declined by 70% during that time, you're short Bitcoin, you would think you'd be making money in that scenario. No,
That's
right?
the love one.
You're short Bitcoin by $1.4 billion and the price declines by 70% and you went bankrupt, right? So that's how people lose their Bitcoin the majority of the time. They trust somebody else with it, or they make a mistake in their approach to self-custody.
So it's actually not theft but of any kind or hacking that is really high on the list. It's trusting other companies, other firms, other people with the keys, with the custody, like a centralized exchange, and making a mistake yourself with your own Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this idea of theft is, and the $5 wrench attack is very potent. It's emotionally, very important for us to be thinking about that, and it is a
Very
risk.
small.
But it's in the grand scheme, it's a smaller portion of the ways that people lose their
Gotcha.
Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, now the good news here is that you can maximize the security that you have for being resilient against mistakes that you make, but also against theft. And that's what our custody solution, this
Yes.
collaborative custody using multisig solution, actually addresses. And then as a bonus, it also puts you in a position where your family and your heirs can have a very secure and easy way to
Very,
access your Bitcoin if something were to happen to you.
very important.
So we can talk about exactly
Yes.
what all this stuff looks like, but the primary relationship, as I said, that we have with most of our clients is around custody. And we do
Yeah.
that in the context of an individual holding Bitcoin in their personal name. We help businesses of all shapes and sizes to hold Bitcoin, having multiple people collaborate to hold keys cooperatively so that they can not have a single point of failure within their business to control this asset and still
Right.
hold it in self-custody. We do that in the context of an IRA, a retirement account in the US. And then within the US, we also are able to offer the ability for our clients to buy and sell Bitcoin. Oliver, love all of the sharing that you do on using our trading platform and
Yeah.
kind of blasting that out to your audience. Um, it seems very clear to me that you love that feature there and would love to get your experience and feedback on
Love it.
what that looks like for you.
That's right.
And then on the commercial side for businesses, we also have Bitcoin-backed loans. So we can talk about exactly what that looks like, but you can borrow against the value of the Bitcoin that your business is holding. And we do that for, business and investment purposes. And so we have a full suite of financial services that allow our clients to secure Bitcoin in the best possible way without a single point of failure, without counterparty risk or having to trust us or anybody else, and then allows them to maximize the value of that Bitcoin that they are holding over the
Awesome.
years.
Let me summarize this, Trey, for a second. So guys, listen, this is very important. What Trey has revealed is the fact that most Bitcoin is lost one of two ways, right? You lose it by it being on an FTX that's trusting someone else to hold it for you, or a Celsius, right? Or a BlockFi. You know the stories, all right? That's number one. Number two is you try to take self-custody. You actually try not to have it in the hands of someone else, but you make a mistake. These are the two ways. And so what Unchained does, the reason why I chose Unchained is because this is too important for me to make a mistake. I understood at that particular point that taking self-custody of my future was what I needed to do. But it's not like I'm a Bitcoin OG. It's not like I'm a Bitcoin developer. I just didn't want to make a mistake. I wanted to make sure that I was basically being led by some of the Bitcoin OGs, and Bitcoin OGs, they basically formed or founded Unchained Capital just to make sure I was doing it correctly. So Unchained helped me self-custody my Bitcoin, literally almost hand holding me through the process. Now, what I also liked was the fact that this does not give Unchained any access to my Bitcoin. It never gave Unchained access to my Bitcoin. It's still mine. No one has access to it. All right. But it introduced a professional element to me making sure that I did it correctly. It was just too important to get it wrong. And so to me, it checked off all the boxes. There's trade-offs to everything, right? There are trade-offs to everything. It's KYC, all right? So I did see a question here. It's KYC, all right? Some people might regard that as a trade-off. Others, almost most of the world's KYC. But to me, it checked off those most important boxes for me. Number one, no one has access to it, only me. All right, number one. Number two, I eliminate a single point of failure. So now I have a backup in the form of Unchained. Even though they don't have access, they are my backup should something happen to one of my keys or what have you. In addition to that, I just wanted to get the process correctly. Now, when you add on top of all of that, that I can buy direct to my cold storage, like, you know how all these other platforms, right? We're buying on this platform and that platform, but then we have to deal with moving it from their platform to our cold storage. Well, with Unchained, that's not necessary. You buy direct to your cold storage without a minor fee. Am I right with that? No minor
Yeah,
fee?
we handle the mining
They
fee associated with
absorb the
that
minor
transaction. Yeah.
fee. So a lot of people say, well, Oliver, what about the fees you're paying or whatever? I'm like, these are almost zero fees. I'm buying direct. There's no markup on the Bitcoin. I'm buying direct to my cold storage and it's done. I don't have another step that introduces the possibility of another error. Listen, I heard a story 2 days ago. A guy was moving his Bitcoin from um, some exchange to his um, self-custody, and he was managing his keys with a ledger. I don't know what happened, but $250,000 disappeared in his transfer from his centralized exchange to his own self-custody wallet using Ledger's live platform. And I don't know the specifics of what happened, but I will tell you that extra step, eliminating that extra step where something can happen is priceless to me. So pressing the button, getting the buy, boom, straight to cold storage, and I have nothing else to worry about for decades
Yeah, it's
is
it's
just
one
freaking
less
amazing.
it's one less spot where you could make a mistake and lose your Bitcoin, and it's one fewer counterparty that you are having to deal with.
That's
You
right.
buy on an exchange and then withdraw to your own keys. Perfectly fine way to do it, but now you've got counterparty risk with the exchange, and for the very limited time that we're making this transaction, which is actually very quick, right, Oliver? When you make a trade and buy Bitcoin, you settle that with a wire transfer. As soon as we clear those funds, the Bitcoin is deposited directly into your multisig vault. And so that can happen very quickly, even for very large amounts. That's another point, is that if you're using a centralized exchange, a lot of them have withdrawal limits. Withdrawal limits for the amount that you can withdraw at any given day. A time limit if you're funding that with an ACH, that you need to wait 10 days, 20 days, 30 days
Yes.
before you even have the ability to withdraw it. And so, and that's, part and partial to using an ACH system, which has the ability to claw these funds back. So we don't need to get into the weeds there, but there are a lot of really important considerations just for how you are buying Bitcoin and doing that in a really good way.
Okay. Good question here. Is Unchained services available in all states in the U.S.?
We are available for the custody and our IRA in all 50 states and the majority of the world. For trading, there are 4 states that we are still working on getting money transmitter licenses and the proper licensing to be able to provide those trading services. New
So
York,
self-custody, most of the world.
self-custody, most of the world. New York is one of those states that at this point in time, for
Always.
various reasons that Oliver knows, I'm sure, all too well, they are notoriously difficult to deal with in terms of licensing and all of that. And so we're still working toward that. We certainly plan on getting to all 50 states at some point in time. Hopefully within the next year, we'll see. But for now, the majority of the U.S. is able to use our trading platform.
Yeah. Just an interesting question here. Bill Baker says that he had to pay a wire fee to purchase using Unchained. Yes, your bank charges you to wire. Will you ever offer an ACH offering instead of wire funds?
Yes, we are working on that. The goal of Unchained is to allow people to interact with the fiat world and the Bitcoin world as seamlessly as possible, to secure their Bitcoin wealth in a way, again, that has no single point of failure, that they don't have to trust anybody, and that they have a team of experts around them so that they can do things the right way, so they can get things set up, so they can get their questions answered in the right way. We are going to be expanding the fiat side of those services in a much greater way over the next year or two. And so one of those things is allowing for a wider range of ways that people can manage the fiat side of their balance sheet within our platform and within our ecosystem, as well as the Bitcoin side. Available
Awesome.
in Germany, yes.
All right. What about Australia?
Yes.
Australia,
Austria, yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's see here. What else do we have here? What about Canada?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe I'll just directly address all of this, right? So we are a regulated financial institution in the US. And so as Oliver was discussing, there is a KYC trade-off here. In large part, that is related to the financial services that we offer, but it's also very important for us to know who our clients are so that we can help them with the key that we are controlling as part of this multi-sig setup. Maybe this is a good time, Oliver, to show a few visuals and just talk about, excuse me, the high level way that all of this works in terms of how
we can bring up those slides now
using our platform and all of that.
Awesome. Just let me quickly take care of this. How do I access Bitcoin in an unlikely event that Unchained ever goes bankrupt or gets shut down? Let me just try my hand at this very quickly, Trey.
Yes,
first of all, you never not have access to your Bitcoin. You are in full control at every moment, every second of your life. It's Unchained that does not have access. You are the one that have access. You have the right to utilize your Bitcoin at any moment of the day, at any moment of your life, at will and at whim. All right. So remember, this is self-custody. It is not Unchained holding the custody. This is the whole point of this, right? You have custody. You do anything you want to with your Bitcoin. All right. Should Unchained go out of business, they're the holder of one of your three keys. You still have two keys. You still have complete control over your Bitcoin with those two keys. There is a configuration file that you need to save so that you can basically reconfigure, I think, the whole multi-sig setup. But Unchained going out of business does not put your Bitcoin at risk because Unchained does not have access to your Bitcoin. This is a very important point to understand. This is self-custody. They are only helping you self-custody your Bitcoin properly, all right? And they are holding one of the three keys. So should you lose one of your keys, there's that backup, okay? And if they are not around, you have your config file to reconfigure, I think, the other key. You can maybe explain this a little bit better. And you still don't need Unchained. But as long as you have access to the two keys, you're fully in control of your Bitcoin. I don't know if you wanted to add something to that, Trey.
Yeah, that's all correct. Oliver, I think this is a great time for us to just give an overview of exactly what does this collaborative custody model look like,
yes,
and how does it work at a very high level, which is going to answer a lot of those other questions, and I'll make sure to layer that in. Sure. So this is not a presentation. This is merely just meant a few slides here to help aid my description of what multisig is and how this process works. And you could see, unchained.com, go check out our website. You can follow me on Twitter at @TS_Hodl. And then I've got a personal website, treysellers.com.
Okay, guys, make sure you follow Trey. You might have some questions you can shoot to him as well. And be familiar with the Unchained website.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide here. So the first thing to say, which we've talked about here, but let's just bring it back to the fundamentals. Bitcoin is always controlled by private keys. You need those private keys in order to spend the Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't vanish out of thin air. It's a ledger that is tracked across the globe, across hundreds of thousands of computers. And the Bitcoin is always there on the blockchain, so to speak. But the question is, who controls that Bitcoin? If you're trusting a centralized exchange, they control the Bitcoin. They control the private keys, assuming that they have it, which FTX did not. When you take self-custody, you are controlling the Bitcoin yourself. You are putting yourself in a position where you have unilateral control. And you can do that with a single key. And here are a few ways that a lot of people use a single key. They use a hardware wallet like a Trezor or Ledger or Cold Card. They'll use a mobile wallet. A mobile wallet has all the functionality of creating transactions and managing your Bitcoin, and then signing those transactions to send it. But it's all built within a mobile app, maybe on your iPhone or your Android application. And that private key is stored on your phone. And then another way to control Bitcoin in single signature, as we call it, single signature, a single key, is to use some software that is just running on your computer. And so the private key there is secured on your computer, and your computer is connected to the internet, and your mobile phone is always connected to the internet, and it's always with you. And then this hardware device, a Ledger, Trezor, or Cold Card, even if you're using it in single signature mode, it at least is not connected to the internet. These are devices that are built specifically to generate private keys in a random way and to allow you to sign for transactions when you want to send your Bitcoin somewhere, in a way that it severs the connection between the internet when you are creating those private keys and when you are signing transactions. So this is hardware specific for that purpose. And this is what we call cold storage versus hot storage or hot wallets, which you're seeing in the two options on the right there. So this is single signature mode. You are controlling Bitcoin by a single private key, and that introduces a lot of control over your Bitcoin instead of trusting somebody else. But it also has the trade-off of being a single point of failure. If somebody else that is not you has access to that private key, they have access to your Bitcoin. They don't need to ask your permission or anything like that. This secret information that is the private key, if they have access to it, they can spend your Bitcoin. It also means that there's a single point of failure to your mistakes. If you have a single copy of this and it's secured in your home, and your home, God forbid, burns down, and that private key material is destroyed, your Bitcoin is no longer accessible. You cannot sign a transaction with that private key because that private key has been destroyed. And the Bitcoin will sit out there, and it'll be available for you to view and torture you for the rest of your days, because you'll be able to see that value out there on the blockchain, but you will not be able to access it. And so those are the kind of trade-offs that Oliver and I were talking about in terms of taking self-custody and the responsibility that you have when you are holding Bitcoin private keys. Multisig is functionality that is built into Bitcoin. Thank you, Oliver. It is not anything that Unchained has created. It's not proprietary in any way. It is built into Bitcoin, and it allows for you to protect your Bitcoin behind multiple keys, with a subset of those needing to sign a transaction before the Bitcoin can move. So we express this generally as M of N. So you have a total number of Bitcoin private keys protecting the Bitcoin. That's the N there on the right. And then the subset that is needed to sign a transaction is M. So common ways of doing this are 2 of 3. Oliver, if you can go to the next slide. and 3 of 5. So these are nice balances of trade-offs with having not a full quorum of those keys needed to sign. If you have 3 of 3 and you lose one of those keys, your Bitcoin is inaccessible. But if you have 2 of 3 and you lose one of those keys, you still have access to the Bitcoin because you can use the other 2 keys in order to move it and react to that situation. 3 of 5 is also a common configuration. Unchained only supports 2 of 3, at least for now. And there's a reason for that, which is that for the vast majority of individuals and even most businesses, 2 of 3 strikes the right balance between complexity and the ability to easily spend your Bitcoin and secure it in the best way. 3 of 5 introduces a lot more complexity and a lot more things that you need to protect with only marginal benefits in security. And in some cases, that complexity can work against you in terms of security. So for individuals, we absolutely are strong advocates for 2 of 3 being the best solution here. Oliver, one more slide here, and then we can kind of get back into the conversation. What we do at Unchained is help our clients to set up a 2 of 3 multisig vault where our clients hold 2 keys and we hold 1. Our clients holding 2 out of the 3 keys puts them in complete control over the Bitcoin. They have unilateral, permissionless access to it at all times, whether they're using our platform or using another open source tool that this configuration is compatible with. You don't have to ask us for permission. If Unchained goes away, you always have access to your Bitcoin. But because we have that 3rd key, we are in a position to help you recover in case something happens to one of those 2 keys that you are controlling, or if something happens to you, we are in a position to help your family, your heirs, to securely access the Bitcoin in accordance with your estate plan. And so a large portion of the focus that we have on when we're talking with clients is around that inheritance related question. What happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? This solution is extremely elegant way to solve that problem, to put your family in a position where if the Bitcoin is going to them, they can actually access it when that time comes. So another important consideration when you're talking about self-custody and something that we proactively address with our clients. So this is the configuration for how all this works. I don't have any more slides here. Again, I just meant to be a visualization for helping to explain what this looks like. And the last thing to say, and then we can get back into the conversation, Oliver, is that Unchained provides best-in-class support for our clients. Best-in-class service from the time that you sign up with us and choose your path for onboarding and all the way through supporting you throughout your Bitcoin journey and being there to help you react to any kind of issues that you might be facing, as well as then being there for your heirs, for the people who are inheriting that Bitcoin from you if something were to happen to you. And we have a kind of a range of options that our clients can choose from as they're coming on board, as well as getting that support from us in an ongoing fashion, which we can dig into. But that is the overview. Now, once you've secured your Bitcoin and you've got this, unseizable wealth in your possession here, then you can access some of the other financial services, assuming that we can offer them in your location and jurisdiction, that kind of thing.
So Trey,
which gets to the IRA and which gets to those commercial loans.
So there's the collaborative multisig, which we just talked about. There's the ability to borrow against your Bitcoin if you currently now, I think the policies change, is if you're an LLC, right? You have the ability to borrow against your Bitcoin, and I'll let you touch upon that in just a second,
sure,
if you like. You offer in a Bitcoin IRA product as well?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you offer, what's the term for it? Inheritance services?
Yes. An inheritance solution to make sure that you are in the appropriate position to make that process easy for your family.
All right. That covers a lot of bases. Now, Unchained did recently change their loan policy. I actually took out a small loan using Unchained against my personal Bitcoin, just to test it out so that I could talk to my people here. And I've come to know that the policies changed to where personal loans against your Bitcoin are not available now, only if you're an LLC. Can you
Yeah.
explain why that policy change occurred?
Yeah, so we have historically offered personal loans. That changed in January 1st of this year. And that was a proactive reaction to some external requirements that we're facing with some banking partners that we're dealing with.
Gotcha.
We are working on reinstating that. I can't give an ETA there, hopefully within the next year or so. But our commercial loans for businesses, for business and investment purposes, remains in operation. And so while we work toward being able to relaunch those consumer loans, for now, those business loans are still available. We work with a lot of businesses. We work with a lot of mining companies. We work with a lot of mom and pop shops where there's just two partners who are collaborating, each holding a key in that multisig. All the way up to large investment funds, family offices, enterprises, corporates, you name it, right? We have experience in helping to craft the appropriate setup that matches the governance structure and organizational structure that those entities have, and a range of options for being able to do that.
All right,
And
so let's,
yep.
awesome. People who are interested in a Bitcoin IRA, can they transfer an existing Bitcoin IRA over to an Unchained based IRA?
Yes. And that is the majority of our clients who come to us, who find us through that IRA. That's what they are doing. That doesn't mean that you can't create a new IRA and make your contributions in accordance with the rule set that's associated with IRAs in the US. But the majority of our clients, they've got this wealth that's locked up in the fiat world. It's at Fidelity, it's at TD Ameritrade. They don't have any access to Bitcoin. The ETF has not launched yet, so they don't even have that as an option. Maybe right. That's coming next week. We'll see. But regardless, that's not real Bitcoin. And our clients recognize the value of holding real Bitcoin in their own in their own control. And that's what our IRA provides. So that same 2 of 3 multisig security posture that you're setting up for your personal or your business Bitcoin, you can also do for retirement Bitcoin, for retirement accounts in the US. It's a standard IRA where you control 2 out of the 3 keys for that Bitcoin that's in that IRA. And so you can roll that in or roll it in from a 401k or transfer it in from another IRA. And we will purchase the Bitcoin on your behalf and deposit it directly into your IRA vault. And then if you've got a personal account and an IRA account and a business account within our platform, you can just toggle between those different accounts. And you can even control the Bitcoin in each one of those contexts with the same 2 hardware devices, the same 2 private keys. You don't have to have like a litany of devices floating around there. And so and that's what we encourage, because we want to minimize the complexity that's associated with doing this so that you don't make mistakes.
I think this is an interesting question here. What's the suggested minimum initial deposit to start? Now, first, I do want to say that understand that you are really not making a deposit into Unchained by any stretch of the imagination, right? You're taking full custody of your Bitcoin. They are assisting you in holding just one of your keys. Now, I just want to clear that up. If you are speaking about at what point does multi-sig make sense? At what value amount does it make sense to take this step away from single sig self-custody? That's a great question, and I'll leave that up to you, Trey.
Yeah, to your point, there is no minimum deposit into your vault. This is a Bitcoin multi-sig wallet that you control, and we don't charge our clients who are in self-custody related to the amount of Bitcoin they have in their self-custody vault. You can choose to have 1 million sats in there or 100,000 Bitcoin, right? It's totally up to you, and you will pay the fees that are flat and not at all related to the assets under management, so to speak, right? Under your management. Now, when does it make sense to go to multi-sig versus single sig? It's a personal question for each of you to think about. But the way that I like to frame this for my clients is, if you are holding what you consider to be a material amount of Bitcoin for your net worth, and you want to hold on to it for a very long period of time and have it available for your heirs, you should use multisig, and specifically you should use this collaborative custody model that makes it easy to manage that process. So some people, one Bitcoin is like a massive amount of their net worth, and you absolutely should be using it. Some people, it's much less than that, and some people, they have a whole lot more, right? And so that is a personal choice there. But think about it in terms of, would you lose a lot of sleep if you lost your Bitcoin? And are you planning on having this for a long-term store of value? Or do you need like very easy access to smaller amounts of it? In that case, you can continue to use a mobile wallet on your phone or a single signature device, in conjunction with multisig for your savings account, and just think of it as savings versus checking.
Yes, I agree with that. Let's take so we addressed we Unchained is available in Germany. Canada, Cayman Islands.
Yes.
Yes for Cayman Islands. Spain.
Yes. I see
Yes
Mexico. Yes.
Yeah. Puerto Rico. Yes. All of these. Yes. Yes.
And in fact, in Puerto Rico, we also do have trading available. So you can buy and sell Bitcoin with us if you're in Puerto Rico.
Right. Awesome. Fantastic. What about Israel?
Yes.
Yes to Israel. Awesome. Fantastic. Great. Great. Now, oh, wait a minute. We got to get this in. Mexico?
Yes, sir.
Mexico.
Mexico, Costa Rica. Yes, I see Costa Rica in there as well.
Costa Rica, yes. Belize, I'm assuming, yes.
Belize, I'm assuming as well. We're starting to get to the limits of my knowledge of what my accounts team is going to look at. But it's basically the globe over, except for the list of OFAC, related countries that are designated by the U.S. there.
I have a huge Spanish-speaking team following. Can you address my Spanish-speaking audience?
We can. We do have one person on our sales team who is also very adept at doing onboardings and helping guide our clients through setting all this stuff up and getting them really comfortable with all this, who is a Spanish speaker. We, over the years as our team grows, I'm sure that bench will expand as well. But his name is Jonathan Barrios. He's a great resource. And if you need that Spanish-speaking led introduction to all of this, an overview, or a Spanish-speaking led onboarding, we can accommodate that.
Awesome. Se habla español. Yes. As my Mexican brothers from the hood would say, firme, firme. Good job. Good job. If you do have an IRA, how does the distribution work at the time of retirement?
Yeah, so I mentioned this very briefly before, but the IRA that we offer is a standard IRA, and all the same rules apply as any other IRA that you might be familiar with from Fidelity or TD or Charles Schwab or whatever. That applies also to the distribution. The exception here is that this is Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, and you are controlling that Bitcoin. When it comes time to distribution, you have the option of taking your distribution in Bitcoin and not necessarily in fiat. Now, you can choose to take your distribution in dollars, and there will be a conversion fee, related to the trading fees that are associated with that conversion. But you don't have to. And a lot of our clients who are taking distributions are, they're filling out the appropriate paperwork and all that just to make sure that the reporting is easy for them. But they're essentially just moving the Bitcoin from their IRA vault into their personal vault. That's what's happening kind of when all is said and done. And so, no conversion fees associated with that because there's no conversion.
I like that. Very good. Very nice.
Yes, Roth and traditional IRA.
Okay, Roth and traditional IRAs. Let's take this question here. In the case of having a loan with Unchained, how are the keys managed?
Yeah. We also leverage 2 of 3 multisig for our loan product. This is the reason that we are still here, that we've survived multiple cycles, all of this volatility that we've seen over the last, 6-7 years that we've been around, is because we approach everything that we do in a fundamentally different way. And that includes our loan product. So in that 2 of 3 multisig vault where the loan collateral is being held, you control 1 key. You obviously can't control 2 keys because if you did that, you'd have full control over the collateral that you're putting up for that loan, and you would have control of the dollars that we're lending. But with that 1 key, you can be cryptographically sure that the Bitcoin has not moved, has not been commingled with anybody else's funds. We, as part of the loan agreement, have no legal ability to rehypothecate or lend out the Bitcoin that is associated with your loan. It is sitting purely as collateral for the loan. That gives you the highest level of assurance that you're going to get the Bitcoin back at the end of that loan term. Now,
yes,
you hold 1 key. Unchained always holds 1 key. And then we work with a third-party key agent who holds that 3rd key. And so in the scenario where there are margin calls and you are unreactive or need to be liquidated for some purpose, that key agent does have the ability to help us with that process. But those stipulations are very clearly laid out in the loan agreement that you're signing with us. The question is, how do you handle RMD for an IRA? An RMD is a required minimum distribution. So we kind of touched on that in terms of this question more generally about distributions. Again, all the same rules apply. So if you're required to take a distribution because you are of age and all of that, you can take that in Bitcoin, you can take that in fiat, totally up to you, but the same rules apply.
Someone wants us to make sure we mention that Unchained also works with inherited IRA.
Very good. Yes, if you have an inherited IRA, you can also transfer that into an Unchained IRA.
Awesome. So here's very interesting because I'm going to put you on the spot here, Trey. I would like, I know what the regular cost is. I'd like to see if you might be able to do something special for us in terms of cost, but can you talk a little bit about cost?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the way that our cost structure works is that it's related to the amount of service that you would like to have from us and the amount of connection that you want, right? So there's a self-service option for coming on board, and you can do that for no cost. You are essentially taking this process into your own hands, and there might be some important things that you're missing. The majority of our clients do not go that route. They are coming through talking to our concierge team to get a guided onboarding to help them set up their devices, to set up their multisig vaults, and get a really good education in the best practices around security for multisig, in how to use our platform for deposits and withdrawals, for accessing it outside of our platform, as we were talking about, for understanding how to access the other financial services that you have, and for understanding what the support infrastructure looks like going forward. And that concierge service, that onboarding service, includes our inheritance protocol. The cost for that for an individual is $750. That's a one-time cost. As I said, it includes that inheritance protocol, which is $300 for the service that you're getting if you want to self-onboard and get that on its own. So that includes all of that. You can add on a couple of devices if you would like, and we'll ship those to you. And then what you get with that onboarding service is 60 minutes with the best team on the planet when it comes to Bitcoin private keys and multisig, helping guide you through this process of setting up your multisig vault, withdrawing from an exchange and getting your Bitcoin secured in multisig, and then just going as deep or shallow as you would like to go in terms of your understanding of how all of this works. It is an incredible experience. I've been here, Oliver, for almost 3 years. I've helped thousands of clients go through this process. Never once have I ever heard somebody say, wow, Trey, that was like such a waste of my time and money. Never happens, never going to happen. So,
well, so let me clarify something. So there is a way to set up a vault absolutely with no cost.
absolutely.
Yes? You can sell, because I want people to be aware of this. You through Unchained, I think it's what's it called?
The concierge onboarding service.
No. I'm saying the free route.
You can self-onboard, meaning you can set up an account and you can, instead of paying for a service with experts to guide you through this process and including the inheritance protocol and all that, you can bring your two devices, a ledger and a Trezor, or two Trezors or whatever, and you can upload those public keys to our platform and build a vault. And we have a DIY guide that's out there that's helpful there. You will miss out on a lot of really great information and education there, but you do have the ability.
I think it's important for people to understand the tiers. So there's a way to do this yourself, which I don't recommend.
Yeah.
Remember the two ways that most Bitcoin is gone forever is basically trusting it to someone else. And even when you're trying not to trust it to someone else, the big way of is making a mistake. This is too important for our future to make a mistake.
Yeah.
So while that option is there, it's not something that I recommend, but I do want it to be clear that there is a way to create it yourself without any help whatsoever. All right. The way that I prefer that you consider is to basically get the professional help, the best team in the business, helping guide you through the process. Remember, they have no access to your Bitcoin. Just keep that in mind.
Yep.
You have 100% access. They are making sure that these mistakes aren't made. They're making sure that it's done right, and they're making sure that you understand it thoroughly. All right. I find that the lack of understanding of what's the purpose of this and why am I doing it can also lead to loss in the future as well. You don't understand what's really going on under the hood. So all of that, in my opinion, is worth that cost. Now, that cost has to make sense to you. All right. If you've got $100 in Bitcoin, it doesn't make sense at this particular level. So while that's personal, I also want you to think about future value. Don't think about current value. So think several cycles out. What potentially is the value of this? And while it may not financially seem to make sense based on today's value, it might very well make sense 2-3 cycles down the line for your family. All right. So think forward. Don't think today. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it in terms of 10x. If what you own now, multiply that by 10x. If you're going to lose sleep with the way that you custodying or protecting that Bitcoin, you should probably get ahead of that. Our time is very valuable, and we've got hundreds and thousands of clients coming to us every single day, and they are willing to make that investment in the security of their Bitcoin, and we are there to service them. But especially in the middle of a bull market, that our time can be a little bit constrained there, right? And so the level of urgency that you may have may be out of sync with our ability to kind of keep up with that urgency. And so we're doing everything that we can to maintain an ability to scale and be able to help everybody as quickly as we can. But just something that's important to keep in mind with this ETF coming in. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over the last few weeks of people who are extremely urgently trying to buy their first Bitcoin or make a large purchase. And some of them are actually willing to pay for what is called Unchained Signature, which is our kind of highest level of service that is available. in contrast to the one-time onboarding cost there of $750, Unchained Signature costs $5,000. It's an annual cost, but it includes your onboarding. It includes any what we call premium support. So let's say that you've got your Bitcoin in self-custody. Something happens to one of those keys. This is the classic example of when you might want to pay for extra support from our concierge team. Something happens to one of those keys and you just don't feel comfortable swapping it out for a new one and sweeping the funds into a new vault without somebody guiding you through that. It's a perfect example of a time frame where you might want to spend $250 for a premium support session, which is what we charge for that time.
Okay.
With Unchained Signature, you have unlimited premium support there. Anytime you've got any kind of question or issue that you need the concierge team's guidance on, you're actually paired up with somebody who you've got a direct relationship with. And they are there to prioritize the support that you need. When you're coming in new, prioritize your onboarding. When you need to set up a new account, prioritize getting that new account set up and that purchase made that you want to do. So it's all about access to our team in a prioritized and proactive manner on an ongoing basis. So proactive account management. And then we also do exclusive events with our signature clients with a lot of the thought leaders in the space. We just did one on Friday with Tour de Meester, and he was giving his update on the macro environment and the Bitcoin market and what he sees for 2024. 60 minutes with Q&A, like very, very valuable stuff there. And then it includes, as I said, all of the fees that you would expect from the personal side of your Bitcoin. So that onboarding cost of $750, the inheritance protocol that's built into there, you get all of that as well. And then one thing that I do need to mention is that historically speaking, we have not charged any kind of an account fee for our personal accounts. And that is going to be changing fairly soon. For our new clients, we'll be announcing this pretty soon, there will be a $250 annual cost to having a personal account. It's very minimal, nothing that's overly crazy there, but for a very long time, we have underpriced the value of our key being included in this collaborative custody model with our clients. And so we are correcting that. And I want to make sure that that's very clear and transparent.
All right. So that first level is no longer going to be free. Is that what you're saying?
The onboarding piece of it will still be free. The account itself will have a $250 annual cost to it.
I'm confused. So, all right, let's do it again. Sorry. Yeah. I'm confused. It's important for me to understand it because I'm going to get bombarded with a lot of questions after you're long and gone, right? So, what is now going from no cost to having this cost?
Having an account and having our key involved in this collaborative custody model with you to help you protect your Bitcoin and be there to sign a transaction if we need to. Yes. That is the new cost that will be applied here coming soon. That's $250 per year. The service to help you onboard, or so to speak, lack of service to help onboard, that is, there's still no cost there. There's not like a setup fee or something like that. It's just an account fee that is going to be, charged at the time that you are creating that account. So you still have the option for self-onboarding and not paying for concierge service, but there will be an account fee, $250. I apologize for the confusion there.
That's all right. All right. This is Bill Baker saying is this for new clients and all old clients get grandfathered in?
It will initially be for new clients only. Sometime in the second half of 2024 is when that will apply for existing clients. And so there will be a grandfathering period, but that is not the case, indefinitely.
Okay. All right, this is a good one. Can you move Bitcoin from your current exchange to Unchained, or can you only buy on Unchained? We know the answer to that.
Yes, of course, you can withdraw Bitcoin from an exchange into your vault. There's no cost to doing that to us or anything like that. You have full control as to the Bitcoin that you are depositing into your vault or removing or withdrawing from your vault because you've got those two keys. So what our interface is, what our platform is just an interface to the Bitcoin network. It's a wallet infrastructure that helps you coordinate transactions and manage the balances that you've got in different Bitcoin addresses. You'll see a transaction history and a balance and all of those things. When you want to deposit in, you'll see a Bitcoin address that is connected to those three keys that are protecting it, the two that you control and the one that Unchained controls. And so when you're withdrawing from an exchange, you'll copy that Bitcoin address and paste it into the withdrawal function on your exchange. And what happens on the exchange side is that they will create a Bitcoin transaction. They will sign it with their private keys. Remember, they control that Bitcoin until you take self-custody. And then they will broadcast that transaction to the Bitcoin network. And once that transaction is broadcasted, you'll be able to see that balance update in the platform right there.
So please understand this, guys. Unchained has an OTC desk through which you can actually buy Bitcoin directly to your vault. Directly, which means that you don't have to transfer it later. Directly to your vault, it's there forever. You do not have to use Unchained to buy Bitcoin. You can continue using anybody else you like, and you can move that Bitcoin to your vault. Remember, guys, this is your vault. It's nobody else's. You can do anything you want with this. It's just that Unchained has an extra key should something happen to one of yours. They're your backup. This is your vault. This is your Bitcoin. There's no permission here. All right. There's no needing Unchained's permission for anything. It's yours.
That's right.
I need you to understand this. Okay. You can do anything you want. You can withdraw anything you want. You can, anytime you want, you can deposit anytime you want. You don't need anybody's permission. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. All right. All right. So I just want to make that clear. I believe that you had some, this was one thing. What third party, this is a good question. What's the third party that holds the third key?
That's Unchained. We are holding that third key. And so this is an important question beyond the literal question here, which is that we are holding that third key. We are in a position to help you recover in case something happens to one of those two keys, or if something happens to you, we can help your family recover, right? We've talked about that. Well, you also have access to our key in the case that maybe you're traveling. You can take one device with you. You can leave the other one in its secure location, and then you can request a signature from Unchained to move the Bitcoin. So in doing so, let's say you are traveling, you still have the ability to access that Bitcoin as and when you would need to. But you're not in a position where if you lost that device while you were traveling, you would lose the Bitcoin. So this is really an important point of multisig, eliminating that single point of failure. Now, when our key is requested for a signature, we do have a verification process that we go through. We need to make sure that it is you, our client, who is requesting that signature and not some other attacker. And so that is a combination of email, we have video verification, and some other forms that we could leverage if the situation warrants it. And so there are kind of layers and layers of account level security that you can implement as well. Things like two-factor authentication, all the things that you would expect to make sure that, logging into your account is secure. Requesting our key is secure as well. We're kind of in the business of not signing transactions for our clients, if that makes sense. We need to make sure that that it is actually you, and this is a legitimate request before we are going to do that. Now, the other trade-off there to mention is that verification process is manual. Our signature is manual. There's no automation there, just like you would want it to be. And so there is a turnaround time that's associated with that, but it is available for you to use.
Now, what I would like to do is just say, look, I'm going to give an example here. Let's say me, I have a 2 of 3, I have 3 keys. One key is with Unchained, and one key of the 3 is with Unchained. I have access to the other key. One key is here with me in Colombia. Another key is in my home in Spain,
Hmm.
say, right? Or secure somewhere in Spain. So I have keys over three different continents: US, Latin America, and Europe, right? If I want to unlock, I have to actually take my key in Colombia, travel to Spain, join them together to make the transaction. All right. But I can use one of my keys and contact Unchained to be my second signer. You need two out of the three.
You need 2 out of the
So,
3, and it doesn't matter which 2.
and it doesn't matter which two. So as long as I have one and there's Unchained, I can unlock my Bitcoin. Without Unchained, if I don't want to involve Unchained, I have to travel from Colombia to Spain or back from Spain to Colombia and join the two keys together. Now, that's an extreme scenario. I'm extreme. All right.
Yeah,
I'm not giving you my exact locations because I just use those as example, but I keep my keys very, very far apart. But if in an emergency type situation, I needed to unlock, there's always Unchained with
that's right.
one of my keys. And that's a huge benefit. All right. They also make sure that it's you. So, you're not being kidnapped or somebody else hasn't stolen your key. All right. They make sure it's you before they sign it. All right.
That's right.
And that's the trade-off. There are trade-offs with this, right? Someone was just asking here, well, what if my information, I know my Bitcoin can't be accessed, but what if my information is hacked with Unchained? I'm not saying that's not an impossibility, but these are some of the trade-offs that we have to make basically. Yes, Unchained knows who I am. They have my information,
Yeah,
but I also have that backup. I have that security. It's impossible to get that unless they know who you are.
yeah,
All right. And so you have to decide what the trade-offs are when it comes to this. For me, I made the decision that marrying some of the safety features of having a third party, um, the benefits of that outweighed them knowing Oliver Velez. But I'm public anyway. Everybody knows me. So for me, it was a little bit less of a concern. But I just wanted to kind of give that example of having your two keys apart from each other. All right. You're doing nothing by having both sitting in your kitchen
yeah. You might as well
drawer.
use single signature.
Yeah, you might as well use single sig. You want them geographically in different locations.
Yeah,
And you with Unchained you're always unlockable, or you with your own two, you always have access. And because Unchained doesn't have a second one, they have no access. And you don't need their permission for anything. It's very important to understand. They don't hold your Bitcoin. You hold your Bitcoin. All right.
yeah. No, that's really important points around the trade-offs as well. Um, there are trade-offs to everything, and our clients think that the trade-off of giving up a little bit of privacy to Unchained, which we are, they're trusting us to secure that information and all that, is worth it to get the benefits of this collaborative model where we can be there to guide them through it and to be there to support them and to be there to support their family. And in terms of the keys in multiple countries or multiple locations, yeah, you do have a bit of a extreme scenario, so to speak. We definitely have a lot of clients who do that. They have the ability to secure it in multiple jurisdictions. So part of that conversation that we were having earlier is about like what happens if Bitcoin self-custody is banned or this and that. You can play a little bit of jurisdictional arbitrage here by having your keys if you have that available in different jurisdictions. So that's a really interesting point. But
Very.
most people, let's just like make this practical for people, right? So let's say that you've got a Trezor and its backup. This is key A. And let's say you've got a Ledger and its backup. This is key B. So these backups are also called seed phrases. You need to keep them in two different locations, right? The majority of people will keep key A in their home, in a safe or a lockbox where it's secure there. The second one will be in a second secure location. So that could be another vacation home in Spain or wherever, right? Like Oliver is doing. Or it could be a trusted family member's house in a different town or across town. It could be a bank safety deposit box down the street. There's a trade-off there in terms of the ability to access that maybe on the weekends or something like that. But even if that safety deposit box was drilled, they can't steal your Bitcoin. So it's probably an okay trade-off if you want the extra security that does come from having a safety deposit box in terms of cameras and people being able to get a hold of that. Could be an office location where you lock it up. It could be a vacation home, somewhere else. So that's kind of personal and available to what you have for you. And that's also part of what our concierge team helps you to figure out, right? They help to guide your thinking on what is personal to you to make this the right balance of the ability to access your Bitcoin completely unilaterally and the ability to take advantage of the different secure locations that you might have available. Now there's a third, or call it a fifth thing to think about here, which is that our inheritance protocol is a package of information and material that helps to put your family into a position where they can very easily work with us to recover access to the Bitcoin if something happens to you. The inheritance protocol consists of an extra seed phrase card. So you will copy a copy of one of your seed phrases onto this extra seed phrase card, and you will put that into a tamper evident bag that we provide, along with a couple of letters. And those letters dictate exactly how to contact us and what documentation is generally needed for us to be able to work with them to use our key to make sure that the Bitcoin can securely move in the direction that your estate plan is dictating. So we can't help you with the estate plan part. That's something you'll have to deal with an estate attorney or somebody who's an expert in that and has like the proper licensing there. But what we can help you with is that key succession planning, the making sure that regardless of what your estate plan is saying, that those heirs can actually access the Bitcoin, because that private key material is so important to being able to access Bitcoin.
Right.
So that is in typically a third location. It's a package that you're giving even to an estate attorney or somebody that you don't fully 100% trust. They can't access your Bitcoin. They don't have enough information to even see how much Bitcoin you are securing in that setup, but they are in a position to react if something happens to you, and it makes it easy for them to work with us.
Right. So I see some questions that basically make it necessary for me to say this, to make this very clear. You will need 2 wallets. You will need like a cold card. You will need like a Trezor. You'll need 2 of them. Unchained will have 1. These are really your 3 keys. They are custodying 1 of your 3. You will be in possession of 2. It might be 2 cold cards. It might be 2 Trezors. It might be a cold card and a Trezor. All right. But you will need 2. And it's these 2 that we want you to keep separate. And these 2 give you control over your Bitcoin, or any 2 of the 3. 1 of yours and the 1 that Unchained has, or 2 that you have. Any 2 unlocks. Because Unchained only has 1, they have no ability to touch or unlock or move your Bitcoin. Very important to understand this, okay?
That's right. We will never have access to your private keys, and you will never have access to ours. If anybody ever asks you to give them your seed phrase or write it out, that's something that should never be in digital form. All of this is stuff that we cover as part of that onboarding to make sure that you're comfortable and understand what's happening here, of course. But very important point that Oliver is making is that you control those 2 keys. You have unilateral control of the Bitcoin because you control a majority of the keys. And our key is something that you'll never have access to, but we can use it to allow you to, to enable you to recover from some kind of issue that you might be facing.
Now, remember, I see another question. This is cold storage.
Yes.
This is not hot storage. This vault is not going to be used for filling up your gas tank, guys. All right. This is your savings. This is your
That's right.
future. This is your base layer of wealth, right? You want to spend sats and have some access. That's a hot wallet on your phone. Do you understand? That's a hot wallet on your phone where you have a small amount of Bitcoin and you go zapping all over the world or what have you. But this is not this. This is your vault. All right. I like that word. This is your security. This is your future.
That's right.
It's not to be used for daily transactions. Okay.
Yeah, you're building your own personal Fort Knox here for your Bitcoin.
That's right.
And if we go out of business, so to speak, or we're shut down by the government or something like that, you would want to react to that scenario, because in effect, what happens is if one of those keys is lost, now you have a 2 of 2 multisig effectively,
That's right.
because only 2 of those keys are available. So you haven't lost your Bitcoin. Great, right? But you would want to react and create a new setup and move the Bitcoin into that new setup.
Awesome.
Okay. All that said, our key is one of the most, if not the most secure on the planet. We have years and years of experience in managing that key and in conducting our operations around signing in a manner that provides the value that you're looking for when you enter into this collaborative custody model, and is very much the reason that this new cost that we were talking about for a personal account is in effect. We've made so much more investment over the years to ensure that our key is enterprise grade. It is available and usable for very large Bitcoin balances, very large amounts of Bitcoin wealth. And so to be able to access the security of that key as part of your quorum and the service infrastructure that is built around that, $250 doesn't seem like all that much on an annual basis.
Right. So you have miners, you have big miners that use Unchained. You have large corporations that use Unchained Capital. It's
investment
not
funds,
just for
family
individuals.
offices, mom and pops with maybe two people who each have a key and they're just cooperating there. For larger organizations that have more complex governance structures, we also have approval workflows that are built into our platform so that more people can be involved in the transaction process beyond just those people who are controlling the private keys. And so, yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can use that 2 of 3 multisig model to fit the needs of a particular organization and how they are structured and who all is involved in the management of that Bitcoin treasury.
Fantastic, Trey. I'm fantastic. Awesome. So I think you came with maybe a little bit of a special for us.
I do. Okay, so exclusive for your members. I'm not going to share any codes here. I'll follow up with exactly what that looks like with you, Oliver, and then you can send it out to your group. But what we are wanting to offer your group is $100 off that concierge onboarding. So instead of $750, it would actually be just $650 for that concierge onboarding service to help you get this set up. Our IRA product has a setup fee that is very close to that. It is $745. We are offering $100 off of that setup fee as well. And then for that signature service, we are going to provide a code for $500 off of that $5,000 for the first year. So again, just to recap what that entails, covers your onboarding, covers your personal account fee, right? So that right there is going to be $1,000 in that first year that you're kind of not having to pay in addition to this. Any premium support that you might need, any extra handholding that you need from our concierge team, you'll have available as part of that signature program. We also have discounted trading fees for our signature clients. So we have some trading tiers in terms of the fee structure that's associated with that. And you'll get 10 basis points off of those trading tiers. So a lot of our signature clients will sign up and they'll cover the entire cost of that because they're making a large purchase, or at least a good portion of it because they're making a large purchase right off the bat there. And then exclusive account management, exclusive events with thought leaders in the space, both virtual and in person in the US, if you're in the US. And then if you have a trust that you're managing your Bitcoin through, instead of in your personal account, any account fees associated with that trust are available. We have a really nice welcome package that includes a block clock micro and a really nice Peter Millar polo shirt that's custom to Unchained, and a few other goodies that I won't spoil. It is kind of the premier way to get fully set up and fully confident in the way that everything is working right off the bat. And a lot of our clients will choose that signature option in the first year, just to make sure that they've got everything that they need and are feeling really good about everything on the inheritance side and beyond. And then it's up to us to make sure that we provide enough value where they want to renew for that second year. So $500 off of that $5,000 cost there, $100 off the standard concierge onboarding, and $100 off the IRA setup fee. So exclusive to you all. I'll follow up with a code for Oliver to share with you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that I get the chance to meet a lot of you and work with you going forward. We have, and I know, sounds like a sales pitch, but it's absolutely true. We have the absolute best team for service and support around Bitcoin and making sure that you are doing things the right way and can get the help that you need as and when you need it, and get the education you need. A lot of our signature clients, we take them down educational rabbit holes that we have expertise in, that we have access to other people to as well. And we try to personalize that for them. So that's another benefit of using that program. But regardless, our team is best in class, best in the business for helping people to secure a material amount of Bitcoin for the long term and make sure it's there for their heirs and their family.
Well, Trey, listen, I want to let you know that I have been extraordinarily careful about whom I allow into our little world here. My people can tell you that, I'm extraordinarily selective. I chose to have Unchained represented here because of my personal experience. The experience I had has perfectly matched the words that you have basically explained here today. First in class, all right, top notch, extraordinarily professional. You've made me feel secure and safe with the processes of self-custodying my Bitcoin. I think it's no surprise to most people here that I self-custody a fairly sizable amount and wanted that extra layer of safety and security, and Unchained delivered that. Because Unchained delivered that for me, I felt comfortable having you represent Unchained here today, and I thank you very much for doing so.
I
I'm looking
appreciate that,
forward to
Oliver.
many of, yeah.
It's so nice to have you as a friend and a client. I have thoroughly enjoyed following you on the X or the Twitter for quite a while. I love your takes. I'm a sucker for the bull juice stuff as much as anybody is. I try to feed into that machine as much as I possibly can. And I view this is the way that I approach working with Unchained and working with this business and helping us to help other people. I view this as the biggest opportunity of my lifetime and my career to be able to lean in to help as many possible people as I can over the next couple of years as Bitcoin kind of goes mainstream. We're at that inflection point. The adoption curve is going to accelerate, I believe. Things are going to be wild, just absolutely wild over the next couple of years. It's going to be so crazy. I can't wait to see what happens. And I'm here for it, man. I'm excited and ready to go. One other thing I wanted to just mention for anybody else who is still on the fence, you've got some other questions and that kind of thing. Of course, you can hit me up on Twitter, like I said, at @TS_Hodl, or you can reach out via my personal website, treysellers.com. We also offer at Unchained complimentary consultations. And so that is a 20-minute conversation with myself or somebody on my team to just guide you through all this stuff. It's complimentary. There's no obligation or anything like that. You just get some dedicated personal time where you can ask the questions that you need to get answered, and then we'll help get you started down the path that makes sense the most for you.
That
So
is what I did. I did a 20-minute call. I had my questions lined up, things that I wasn't clear about, things that were a little hazy for me. I used that 20 minutes to get clarity and boom. So I strongly encourage that if you do have those, still have those questions, to take advantage of that 20-minute free consultation. Guys, this is the moment. This is the time. I've decided to do this because of where I think we're going in a relatively short period of time. All that's happening here now, now in the space with Bitcoin, I think it is created a higher calling for us locking down our future, securing our Bitcoin the proper way. And this is very, very well timed in my opinion. So that's the reason why I wanted to have this. And Trey, I want to thank you for taking time. I know the weekends are usually dedicated for family, but I appreciate you taking a couple of hours out of your time to be here with us. And I'm hoping that many of my people follow up and take futures in their own hand and take their Bitcoin in their own self custody.
absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to getting back to my family and friends, Oliver, and I consider
Oh,
you a
fantastic.
good friend. So,
Thank you. All right, my friend.
all right.
All right. Ciao
Thank
for
you
now.
all.
All right. Thank you. Ciao. All right, guys. Look, I can sit here and take a number of your questions, guys. I hope you appreciated that. But I do want to let you know that, guys, I think that there's a very good possibility that this cycle over the next 2 years takes Bitcoin to being in the number one spot outside of gold. I think that this becomes the most valuable asset on planet Earth. And with that being the case, you have to start thinking about securing this the proper way. Some of you are going to be okay still staying with single signature, one wallet that secures your one key. That is great up to a certain point. But if things start getting to the place where you feel your value in this, especially if Bitcoin goes to over $100,000 a coin, if that starts to become serious for you, one is doesn't cut it, in my opinion. One key does not cut it. You need to, because if something happens to this one, everything is gone in your life. And so eliminating that single point of failure and spreading the risk out over several is the way to go after a certain point. Many of you, this is not for you, but some of you it is. All right. And some of you might need to take that step to go from one to three, two of which you control. All right. And you have to determine that. And again, if you're not sure, you just give them a call and set up that 20-minute free consultation. English and Spanish. Multisig, globally available, all right, almost in all 50 states except for. And what I love about it is that I buy directly into my vault and I eliminate that extra step. Now, when I buy from Swan, I have to actually move it from Swan to my vault. All right. So I'm buying at Swan, moving, and then later when it becomes available, moving it from Swan to my vault. If I buy on Coinbase, when the Bitcoin is available on Coinbase, I now have to move it from Coinbase, get charged a minor fee, the minor fee, to move it to my vault. When I buy directly from Unchained, it goes directly to my vault. Now, you don't have to buy. You can continue buying from Swan. I do as well. You can continue buying from Coinbase or wherever you buy and just move it to your vault. But I like to buy directly through Unchained from time to time because if I'm buying in decent chunks, it just goes straight to my vault and I don't have to worry about that second step. Do you understand? and it's locked there forever until I want to access it. All right. So anyway, let me take a couple of your questions here. Yes, Unchained is available in Mexico. You can self-custody using their services in Mexico, of course.